So in a recent video that I made on my process for creating fan art, I was talking a lot about storytelling and how coming up with weird narrative possibilities for these different pre-existing things really was at the center of that process. And I was starting to dive into some Star Wars fan art that I did, but I had to cut that short because aside from that image, the rest of the Star Wars fan art that I've been doing kind of stems from this sort of fan-fiction-y idea that I was coming up with where I created some new characters and I was exploring the possibilities of rendering Coruscant and trying to learn how to do that on the iPad. It's really hard for me. It's really tricky to do background painting and sort of environmental painting. So I wanted to share a little bit about that as well as the ideas that were informing these fan art images and kind of share a little bit about this Star Wars idea that I had and kind of put myself out there in the open kind of like that. I'm not used to doing that, so I'm gonna try something new here today. Like I've probably mentioned, I love Star Wars and it was like the first thing I remember really watching, and it's really daunting to try and create something in that universe. But at the same time, it seems like Star Wars is such a great sandbox for that kind of thing. So I knew I wanted to make something in the Star Wars universe, but I didn't really know what to do since there's been so much that's been done already. My mind instantly ran to the time period in between episodes 6 and 7 where we don't really know what was going on. That really fascinated me, and I thought of creating this character who is a Force sensitive, and she also is from Scylla, and she is a former Chiss Merc who is really eager to go after that inner voice that the Force is calling to her, essentially. And she's never really known what to do with it, but she has, throughout her years, used it on and off. And with the Empire's downfall 4 years after the Battle of Yavin in episode 4, I just thought if there was any time for this woman to want to explore that calling of the Force and learn about the Jedi, it would be now, because the Empire is like preoccupied. We see the movies and we see that, there's a range of ages that people, that come into their own with being a Jedi. And even in The Last Jedi, the idea of anyone potentially having access to the Force and being a part of the Force was something that was introduced, really. So having this woman in her mid-50s who doesn't really know what to do with her life because she's kind of still finding herself, even though she's in her mid-50s. It's something that I thought would be a weird direction to take a protagonist character and have that person just start to learn to be a Jedi. Another bit of backstory is she is a master of Teras Kasi, which is a martial art in the Star Wars universe, and we see this in different expanded universe stories as well as Solo even. She uses martial arts as a way to really pick up the slack for her lack of knowledge with saber combat and extreme proficiency in the Force. That's a lot, and there's actually a lot of the process that I can't really show because I created this in the beta version of Photoshop for iPad, but it was a lot of fun, and I am excited to continue to see where her design goes and how it evolves. But next for me was the setting. Where is she? What's the state of the galaxy like? And my favorite planet in the Star Wars universe by far is Coruscant. I love the location so much. It's like this metropolitan sort of futuristic cityscape that's just so vibrant and exciting. You have this beautifully sort of well-crafted city and these tall towering skyscrapers on the upper levels. And then in the lower levels, you have a seedy underworld where the people who aren't wealthy and the people who don't have access live. And there's a lot that you could explore with that sort of environment. And this is where 1313 comes in. 1313 is something that always has intrigued me ever since really learning about that location in the Clone Wars show, as well as that canceled game that, I don't know, the canceled game. And this is a Coruscant that's having to kind of find itself again after being under the Empire's rule for so long. Coruscant was such a technical challenge, starting with the sketch and going all the way to just trying to get those buildings right, trying to get the lighting and the shading right. And then once I had that down, I had to render that foreground and create all those different blocks manually and shade everything, trying different blending modes to see what would accentuate those textures well. I had to create that sinkhole sort of gateway into 1313 and show the different lights and textures that you would see in what's essentially just like a giant hangar bay and just a bunch of these different levels until you get to level 1313. This time, Coruscant has just been liberated, and it's been about a year since the destruction of the Death Star. So right now, the Empire is caught in a power struggle where you don't really know who's in charge. So what is Coruscant like now? The Jedi character that I showed in that first image, we'll call her Tissiv. So Tissiv is flying in this speeder, into 1313. She's actually using the speeder from episode 2 Attack of the Clones. I don't know if you can recognize it, but it's where Obi-Wan and Anakin are chasing Zam Wesell through the Coruscant nightlife. And it's just so awesome. I always loved that as a kid. I remember seeing it in the theater and I was just like, oh, this is awesome. And I always liked that speeder design. Really wanted to incorporate that in here in some way. I wanted to kind of give it this chrome look and also give it a worn and weathered look, especially since the eras of Star Wars changed the look of how the different objects in Star Wars end up appearing. You go to the prequels, which are almost like a Renaissance era, and even the Old Republic, which is like an ancient era, and it's so futuristic and glossy in those different times, and things just get worse as the Empire ends up having its grip on the galaxy in the original trilogy, and then the First Order in the sequel trilogy. So definitely showing kind of a worn, weathered speeder that is a version of the speeder that we saw in episode 2, which is kind of something that I wanted to do. Getting that glow right in that surface and everything, the sun flare and everything, it was just really tough to really get this done, and definitely rage quit a few times here, and I also rage quit a lot in the next image, which is the street of 1313, where I really wanted to show what 1313 looks like on that lower level. This was really tough because, like I said, I'm not great with environment and background painting, so I had to create this entire street from scratch because there was really no source image I could use to kind of paint over or anything like that I had. So it really was such a helpful and healthy growing and learning experience, but I really just didn't like the process of making this thing, if we're being honest. It was really grueling. Well, I did kind of like adding the Arabesh logos to everything. What I was going for with this one was 1313 in the Clone Wars series, and wherever we've seen it, you still have a lot of people that are there, even though it's the underworld and this is where the people who don't have as much access live. You still have a lot of people that are around here, and in this image, given that this is years later, it's a ghost town, and everything's on, and there are these different places, but no one's walking around there. So she's kind of speeding through this sort of Western-esque type of scene. It started with me just rendering basic shapes of what I wanted the street to look like, and then just kind of doing the different details and different things like that as I went along. But creating the buildings and stuff was something that happened, I think, first, actually. And then just going in and detailing everything and creating these different signs and different lights, getting that reflection, and then adding the ship from the last image in here, and then just kind of interjecting it and creating some fog and just some shading details and things just to give it some more life. I want to go for a cyberpunk vibe here, and this is where Tissav currently lives. So she is back home and kind of see life in 1313 in the wake of the aftermath of that war between the Empire and the Rebellion. Okay, so for this next image, you're seeing a camera change, and that's because this guy accidentally deleted the clips that I was going to be using for this part and for this commentary, because I thought I didn't need them anymore, and I was running a little bit low on storage on my camera and iPad, so choices were made, but here we are. That out of the way, though, I've created 2 new characters, and their names are Carver and Des, and they are a bounty hunter duo that's trying to just kind of make their way across the galaxy. Carver and Des are 2 characters that I've had in my mind for like 2 years. Like, I've wanted to do something around bounty hunters, and I knew that if I wanted to do something about bounty hunters, that I wanted to make them, I guess, slightly different than the normal bounty hunter. So these 2 are, first of all, really kind, really like thoughtful and nice people to get along with and to talk to, and they have a very strong value system. So this means that they're only doing gigs that they feel benefit the collective and common good. So they're not taking gigs from the slimy, normal bosses you would find in that underworld of bounty hunting. And this is awkward because Carver used to idolize a lot of the legendary bounty hunters. You're talking about people like Boba Fett, Bosk, Dengar, IG-88, Cad Bane, right? He was like a fanboy of those people, and in recent years he's become very disillusioned with them because he realized that they benefited from a very kind of corrupt system. This is someone who's usually very optimistic and very sort of wide-eyed, and he's kind of become a little cynical in that regard because he's just kind of like, wow, these guys are just so terrible, and that's actually how he talks. So he's kind of become disillusioned with the fact that these are the people that made bounty hunting what it is, and he's trying to kind of reshape it. Meanwhile, Des's main concern is researching droid tech and finding new ways to integrate droid tech with different living organisms to increase accessibility for people who might be injured, who might have disabilities of some kind, and also she's trying to increase combat readiness for people who are usually picked on or who might find themselves in tricky situations where they don't have bounty hunters or armies looking after them. She believes everyone should be benefiting from these innovations, and Carver is actually an example of successful droid tech integration because Carver got into a really bad accident years prior, and he was basically going to be out of commission. And then Des ends up giving him these droid tech implants using proxy tech, and this completely got him back to like 110%. And this was actually very interesting for combat scenarios. When it comes to fighting, these guys are really tough because Des, through her droid tech, is able to basically predict enemy attacks through her analysis of all these different fighting styles and different combat methods over years of research. She's able to use this in battle with her neck weapon. She's got like this neck apparatus, and it will give her sort of a holo display of what's going on. Whenever someone is attacking them, she can analyze what's going to be the most effective counterattack measure. She's able to relay that information to Carver, and then Carver is able to mimic the enemy attackers. Yeah, they're really tough. Within reason, they're not like fighting armies of people. This is meant for like skirmish level stuff. This makes them very dangerous. So then it's like, how are they not getting work? How are they not making tons of money? It's just because the highest paying gigs and the most accessible gigs are the scummy ones. So these people have kind of built a name for themselves, being those two renegades that will end up helping out those people that really need it the most, and they end up getting approached by those people to do these jobs. But because these people are usually in dire straits and they're usually struggling, they don't have a ton of credits to offer, so they usually take a lot of pro bono stuff and they're just trying to make an honest living. They're kind of in a bit of a lull with just kind of a slow, dry period of like trying to find stuff to get done, and this leads them to 1313, where they end up having to look for a Chiss mercenary who's kind of gone renegade, and they're trying to figure out like, is this person even someone we should be hunting, or do they have their own like solid reasons for leaving? Let's just find her and let's just talk to her. Very weird, unorthodox way of doing that sort of a job. And they're standing on the balcony waiting in 1313 because their intel suggests that she is somewhere in that lower level. I have a lot more to say about these two and about how they interact with Tissif and about the two other characters that are going to enter the foray, and then like 3 other characters. It's a small story. At the end of the year, I want to have a larger series of images that sort of portray this vision that I'm trying to relay to you in just kind of like vaguely talking about in a video. It's not the best way to do this. But that's kind of the fun of like this fan art stuff, is it inspires me so much. I also just posted another image in the series, and it's the final image of the series for now, and it is Tissif landing at the docking bay in 1313. And I'm going to cap it off there. That's where the story sort of ends for now, and I'll pick back up later like I'm mentioning. But yeah, this was a huge challenge. The biggest challenge was the technical aspect of everything. Rendering those buildings, trying to do a speeder, and creating a few different characters, and trying to get the vibe and the visual tone of what this was just like absurdly challenging. And I feel like I've learned a lot in a very crunched time frame, so I'm very, very happy about that, because this was worth it, and I'm so stoked to do more of this and to revisit the Star Wars universe. That'll be fun. But anyway, that's it for now. So hopefully you guys found this to be somewhat interesting and enjoyable, and thanks so much for watching. And I just hit like 100 subscribers, so thanks so much for watching and seeing what I do. I really appreciate it. There's a ton to share. There's a lot that I want to do, which is why I'm now like setting it in stone here. Tuesdays and Fridays. There will be uploads every Tuesday and every Friday. I'm kind of doing this because I'm so late to the YouTube game that I kind of have to upload a lot if I want to see any growth. I want to show up as much as I can here, give y'all as much process stuff, as much informative stuff as I can. That kind of sheds more light into mobile creation and also different fields within it. So it's something I'm going to be kind of prioritizing over the next like 12 months. This is like a thing I'm committing here, etching it in video form so that I'm accountable. But really, thanks again for supporting. There's more coming soon, so until then, I guess I'll see you guys later.